Welcome to the NCDWI Guy podcast, where defenders of the Constitution assemble to prepare for courtroom battle and firm owners gather to develop marketing strategies that will revolutionize the practice of criminal defense. Here's your host, the NCDWI Guy, Jake Minnick.
Hello, fellow freedom fighters, and welcome to episode 170 of the NCDWI Guy podcast. On today's episode, I have the entertaining, exciting Robert Ingalls on the podcast. Robert describes himself as a recovering lawyer, and on today's episode, he shares his journey through law school. Very inspirational story of what led him into law school. He was criminal defense from the word go and got into practicing and realized it was not what he had pictured it to be. And so exited his criminal defense practice and ultimately exited practicing law altogether, and has an incredibly interesting and I think thought-provoking story that he shares, his life story that he shares in regards to his move from practice into his current business, LawPods, where he helps lawyers that are launching, promoting, creating, generating, pushing out their podcast to the world. Robert helps all different types of or lawyers practicing all different types of law through the podcast, and really I think has some very powerful insights in terms of the power of podcasting and how to do a better job branding your business. So really a fun conversation with Robert. If you are interested in having a good time and picking up on some really powerful business insights, don't miss out on today's episode. Well, Robert, it was absolute blast getting to meet you in person at the NCAJ convention. I know we talked, I think by video call, maybe phone call as well, but definitely by video call in the past. But first time meeting in person, and it was absolute blast of a conversation. And so, immediately it was like, gotta have Robert, the podcaster's podcaster, come on the podcast and kind of share your story. I think it's super cool what you are doing and also what led to that. So kind of before we get into some of the podcasting tips that you have and, the value of podcasting. Yeah, man, I'd love to just kind of step a little bit back into the background of the law school and lawyer Robert. So what led to this? What led to this thing? What got you into law school and into criminal defense, and then further down the road into where you're at right now?
Oh, wow, we'll spend the episode on that alone. I feel like you let me. Yeah. But first, thanks for having me. Really excited to be here. I've been following the show for a long time. There are very few lawyers, especially lawyers that are spearheading it themselves, that have a podcast, that are doing it well, and that are consistently publishing episodes that are valuable, that people actually want to listen to. So that's a really big deal. And then, thanks for having me, because, my love languages are, I really like your podcast, and will you come be a guest on my podcast?
That's awesome.
I'm always happy to be here.
Love it. Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So as far as going to law school, I feel like I had kind of a similar story to a lot of people. Wanted to be a lawyer from a young age. I found justice very compelling. I liked stories of justice and watching them on television, and the idea that I could help somebody who'd been wrongly accused, but also from the victim side of seeking justice for somebody who has been wronged. And we had a murder in my town when I was 10, 12 years old. And it made national news. They made a couple of TV movies about it, a couple books about it, the Von Stein murders. And I was just really wrapped up in that, like just fascinated by what happened. I made my mom drive me by the house multiple times and follow the trial. She even took me to part of the trial and let me watch some of it. Yeah, and to me, I was sitting like feet away from this person who was accused of doing this horrible thing. And I was just intoxicated by it. And the lawyers with their suits and their arguments, and they're standing up and no one else is talking while they're talking. I don't know what that says about me, but I loved it. The idea that I was like, that's what I want. And I grew up in a blue collar community. We lived in a trailer when I was young, and lawyers were people of status. Willie Nelson, let them be doctors and lawyers and such. That was like lawyers in my community. People had their jokes, but their lawyer was good. Their lawyer took care of things. This guy was smart. She drove a Mercedes with the leather seats and the metal. I forget what those things are. The hood ornament, like that kind of stuff was just like, that is success. And so from an early age, that was something that appealed to me a lot. And then I also heard, which I think people need to stop telling children, that they should be lawyers because they like to argue. But I heard that a lot too. You should be a lawyer. You like to argue. And all of that kind of had me on that track in the background my whole life. And I got into school. I took some twists and turns. I got really into philosophy and religion for like 1 year. And then when I was starting to get more serious about school, I got back on that track. I was like, this is interesting to me. I want to try this. I think I was also scared of becoming a real adult. And it was like, law school, more school. Let's go check that out. Which was a real wake up call when I got there, because I was used to mostly skating by. I feel like a lot of people that went to law school are kind of used to skating by.
Yeah, I think so too.
And then I got to law school and I was like, this sucks. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of the short story for how I ended up there. Like I was really drawn to it from a very young age.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's such a interesting kind of like path into law school. I mean, I think I've heard a lot of people on the podcast that have either had their mom or dad was a lawyer, and so they kind of saw it from that perspective, and it was just part of like family life. So that drew them in. They had another kind of like parental figure in the community that was a lawyer, that kind of like. But I don't think I've really had many people that it was like this case that was going on was kind of part of the intrigue, and having the interest of like seeing the space and being a part of the trial. That's really kind of like a compelling story in terms of getting into it. So that's super cool. And I think you're maybe one of the few people, and I don't know if this was just because of the seriousness of that trial, or maybe the lawyers themselves, but I feel like the glamour that you would expect in the courtroom is often not there. And in your case, it was like the exact opposite. It was like, this is it, like the showtime right here. So it's cool to hear it from that perspective.
Yeah. And then obviously the reality of practicing law was a little different.
Like that. Yeah.
Not like that. A bit more monotonous. But at the same time, that is, people ask me frequently, do you miss it? And by and large, no. As a whole, no. I don't pretend to know who I'm going to be in 5 or 10 years, but I don't expect that I will ever go back. But I do miss trial. I miss when the work is done and it's time to sit down and it's time to pull out the guns. And that is such an intoxicating experience, especially when it's a good one.
Yeah.
And that is so far in life, outside of maybe recreational substances, I have never gotten that feeling from anything else. I speak at conferences now, some national conferences with large rooms, and that's exciting. It really brings me up, but it doesn't feel the same as a trial.
Yeah.
There's something about that, just that being on, that is, I do have a spot that kind of misses that. When people are telling me the war stories from the trial, like I can feel my heartbeat start to come up, and I'm like, oh, so I do miss that a little bit.
Yeah, I can't remember which I want to say it was Bubba Head that said this, but I can't remember who it was specifically, that, getting a, not guilty after a jury trial is better than sex. Like, he was like, the dopamine hit is just like the highest it'll ever be. And it's just one of those things where, I do think that there is so much like stress in the preparation. There's stress during the trial, but it's also like one of those times where you just feel most alive because everything matters. You're living like right in the moment, that you're paying attention to everything that's being said. It really is like a pretty unique space. And then you get to be, something that I would say I'm not particularly good at, but it's still fun. I really enjoy this part of it. And when I watch somebody that's really good at it, it's even almost even more fun than doing it myself. But like, the storytelling to the jury is just such a awesome part of the whole process. Storytelling through the voir dire, storytelling through the opening statement and closing, and through the testimony. Like, it's just such a fun part of it. So totally get that. And I feel very much the same way.
Yeah. Watching the masters at work is incredible. And that was something that's actually been something that my new career has given me more of than I originally had. I've been very fortunate to work with some of the biggest law firms in the world, but also some of the most well-seasoned trial lawyers in the nation. And going to the conferences and listening to them, and just the little things, the inflection in their voice while they're asking a question or introducing themselves to the jury. It's not, for many of them, some of it was natural, but a lot of it was learned doing the reps of, okay, when I do it like this, I can see this. When I do it like that, they kind of check out a little. And so from the moment you walk in, from the moment the jury sees you, they're thinking about how they're being perceived, the way they speak to them. And every little thing from moment one is building towards what you're going to ask them to do at the end of it. And there's so much going on that even when I was practicing, I had no idea. Like, I didn't know what I didn't know. And so watching those people do those things, it's not an accident that the same people are getting those big verdicts over and over. They're really good at what they do. And it's been just a joy being able to just be in the same space.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I totally agree. I think, the more you get to talk to the people that are the true masters of the courtroom, it's just, oh, it's amazing. Like, I mean,
they're playing a different game sometimes.
They're playing a different game. So, well, based on the kind of what drew you into becoming a lawyer and going to law school, with that case you were describing, it's a pretty easy connection then to maybe what led down into the criminal defense path. But what as you were going through law school, or kind of as you were coming out of law school, put you into the criminal defense space?
Yeah, it was always criminal for me. Like, from day one, that's what I went to school for. That is who I saw myself as. That was going to be my career. And before I went to law school, I followed the North Carolina Center for Actual Innocence very closely. And I jumped at the opportunity to start working with them when I got into law school. And that was a really cool process too. You get handed a case file and you get to work on it, and you get to call these people and talk to them who were in jail and get their side of the story. And just that whole process was really, really cool. So it was always criminal. Like, throughout school, I never was thinking, oh, that might be fun to go do tax, or none of that. It was very solely, focused on that. But the disillusionment with law definitely started in law school as well. This is not exactly what I thought it was going to be. And, you get to law school and everybody's smart. That was kind of frustrating too, because, I think I said this earlier, but I was used to, for the most part, being able to kind of skate by. And then I got there, and that was over. That was over. and that was a life lesson, a little slap in the face that I needed. But I really didn't like law school. I don't have very fond feelings. I have very fond feelings about studying for the bar because I was like just with my crew and we were just like soldiering through. But other than that, like law school, I didn't enjoy that experience. And then I got out and started practicing law, and I did enjoy it, especially those first, like, I feel like you always remember that first time that you walk into the courtroom as someone's lawyer and you're standing up there and you're doing things and you're green, but at the same time, you're a lawyer. You're doing the thing that you've been working your entire life to do. And that was a really cool feeling. But when I got into criminal law, I was idealistic. And I think a lot of us are. I think it might, I'm not even sure if it's a bug. It might be a feature. And that got I got relieved of that relatively quickly. And I was on the appointed list, which I wanted to be. And I'll preface this by saying I helped some, what I believe to be really good people that had found themselves in tough situations. And I felt really good about that. And more often than not, I felt like the bad guy in somebody's movie on most days. And I ended up in, I think it's like 4130 DV court a lot. And I have 4 sisters, and I was the only boy in the house, and this probably flavors my experience a little bit, but I found myself in a position where I felt like I was helping people who were doing bad things. And for whatever reason, sure, I understand people have different life experiences that lead them to the moment that you experience them. But I felt like the bad guy in the movie. And I've got this sometimes woman, sometimes young girl who is just, you can tell she's barely hanging on. And I'm there undermining her credibility for what I perceive in the moment to be an asshole.
Yeah.
Doing bad things. I have just minutes earlier looked at some pictures of what this woman looked like a few months ago, and I'm mortified by it. And now I'm crafting an argument to try to make her look perhaps bad, I guess, is the best way I can. It's not what I was trying to do, but at the end of the day, I feel like that's what was happening. And then the family's there and they're staring knives at you. And for better or for worse, I like it when people like me. That's just who I am. And, for who I am. And that was hard on me every day to have to play that role. And, I don't, in no way do I think what I was doing was wrong. I felt that it needs to be done. I love that people are still doing it well. People like you are really leading the charge and helping people. They need this, but it didn't feel right to me. I went home at night and I felt bad about myself, and I had trouble sleeping. I had dreams about these things, and it was pretty clear in the first couple of years that I didn't think this was something that I could sustain. Like most lawyers, when we hit that wall, I started looking for solutions. I picked up mentors. How do you handle this? And I tried all the little techniques to people say, we can't bring it with you. I don't have that feature of being able to not, my entire life goes everywhere I go. And I mean, at this point, I've stopped even trying to not do that. I've just tried to live my life in a way that allows me to be okay with that. But I couldn't leave it at work. And then, towards the end of my criminal defense time, I had a consultation that I brought a mentor in on because it was high level, but it had to deal with children and exploitation. And it was pretty clear during the consultation. I mean, he was essentially, the client was like, yeah, this is a thing I did. And then my mentor explained to me what discovery in the case was going to look like. Because he was like, do you think you can do this? And I said, I do not. And that was one of the moments where I went, I'm not in the right place.
Yeah.
I can't live a life that brings me face to face with these things on a regular basis and then makes me the champion of them. And again, I never want anybody to hear me and think that I'm saying someone shouldn't do that, because they should.
Yeah, no, I think that's such a huge point. And I think it's why it's so important to love what you do, whether that is, being, a lawyer, but, practicing a specific type of law within a specific type of law, criminal defense, handling the type of cases that give you energy. I think for most people that come out of law school and are really interested in doing criminal work, whether that's on the prosecution end of things or the defense end of things, everything that you're reading in law school is not about speeding tickets. It's about murder, rape, larceny, trafficking, I mean, it's serious. And every crime is serious. So I don't want to downplay traffic tickets or DWIs, but it's felony cases that kind of mostly intrigues people into criminal work. And so when you come out of law school, whether you're on prosecution or defense, you start in district court, kind of with the hopes that maybe I move up into superior court level cases and kind of get, become one of the people that is, doing the jury trials on this big charge. And, like you, I mean, I think that for significant, big consequence cases on the criminal defense end, there is a need for excellent lawyers. First of all, because that person is entitled to a lawyer. Second, because it really is, to me, like the last bastion of freedom in our country is criminal defense lawyers and comedians. And so I think that's the place where the Constitution gets its chance to stand, stand for something. And it is through these cases a lot of times where poor police work, bad police work, sometimes bad apples on the police end of things. And again, I think those are few and far between, but that's where these types of situations are rooted out. And you don't want that in the system. And it's only because of the criminal justice system that we can do that. But like you, I kind of, was just like the stress of certain types of cases ultimately became not worth it. Early on, I had clients that were charged with assault, with trafficking, with, and I just never got to a place where I was kind of comfortable in a lot of those types of representing clients with those charges, because I couldn't really, first of all, predict what was going to happen. I just didn't have a good handle on what is this going to look like down the road. But secondly, it was just there's too much stress. It wasn't something that I was connecting with. It's man, this person has 20 years hanging over their head. Am I doing all the things it was just causing a lot of stress. And so the beautiful thing for me in terms of the DWI front and kind of focusing on that type of case, even though there's still other traffic charges and misdemeanor cases that I will handle, is that, I could really connect with the client over that. It was something where it was kind of this is a place where I feel like I can help. I can use this, not only to deliver justice in the courtroom, but to really help my client get their life on track. And there was something that was kind of positive energy that kind of came out of that I really found valuable. So kind of back to to your point, I think that recognizing if there's stuff that really is causing a lack of sleep at night or causing you to not be able to live a healthy life. I mean, it might be a good sign that that's not kind of what you were put on this earth to do. So yeah, I think that's such a valuable point.
Yeah, and I feel super fortunate just to have the ability to even think about that, because yes, I know that is a privilege that a lot of people don't have, and that's what held me back, I think, for a while, was this idea that I spent my whole life, spent a lot of money, and my parents were there for me, a lot of support, and then I was just going to be like, meh. And that just, my parents are, they're tough. They worked for what they got. And they really, there were 5 of us, they supported us, but not only did they support us well, they brought themselves up. They worked extra. They were hustlers and created a really nice life for themselves. And which made me feel even worse, being like, well, you helped me and you supported me, but I don't think I want to do this anymore. Like, that's how I kind of framed it in my head. And so that was it was a bit of a stumbling block to get over, to just try to leave criminal law, but then eventually to say law's not for me entirely.
Yeah, that's a big, well, yeah, I guess in terms of that step, and then ultimately kind of what led to, developing your business and going into podcasting. What was it kind of that created that move, out of not only the courtroom, but into a whole new industry?
Yeah. And so, leaving criminal law was step one. And, I had one specific case where a client said something to me that just smacked me in the face, really. And I called my paralegal and I said, I don't know how to do this, but please figure out today how to get us off the appointed list. I'm done. And so I started transitioning out of that and did a lot of general civil after that, just trying to figure out what to do. Started hustling traffic tickets, just trying to find my place. Did a ton of unemployment hearings, which is a great way if people are looking to get trial practice. Great way to get trial practice. You can just shoot from the hip on those. It's really fun. I probably did 300 of them. But even there, I was still very stressed. There was it was really the constant conflict that wore me down. And you know how lawyers can be.
Oh yeah.
And
much worse on the civil end too, from that front. Even though the cases, I don't know, maybe the cases don't carry the weight, but the opposing counsel definitely makes up for it. So
yeah, I mean, you can get some real pain in the ass prosecutors, but it was way worse dealing with opposing counsel in the civil world. Just you would think that you had sued their mother the way some of them act.
That's so crazy.
And so that was pretty difficult on me. And it I feel like I could spend a lot of time there with just how difficult that was. But I was learning slowly, like, this isn't going to work over a period of years. And I got married in 2015. And I was, at that time, my wife didn't realize it, but I was barely hanging on. We went on our honeymoon right after we got married, and I had a client I had several different things going on. One client ended up getting arrested and they're back in jail, and they're calling me on my honeymoon, and I'm trying to call someone else who can try to help me. And then another client, there was some assault issues going on with his wife, and it was just all kinds of things. And they're like really excited and they really need my help, and I'm not there. And I didn't have a structure in place to really answer those things. And I was like, this sucks. This is just ruining the moments in my life that are supposed to be good. And that was tough, but it was about 3 or 4 months later that it all came to a head. And it really, I know where I was. I was in my spare bedroom. I was packing for the lake to go on vacation with my family. And my wife walks in and she says, I want to have a baby. And I said, okay. And she just kind of looked at me, and I was like, well, when? And she was like, well, now. And I was like, now? She was like, well, I started taking my temperature, and I think that now is good. And I'm like, whoa. And it's a lot to process, because when we got married, we really came in with maybe we will. We weren't really sure, which I don't know who we thought we were, because we are not young. But it was just a lot to take, and I'd like to tell you that I had a proper emotional response. But I really had a proper freak out. And again, mostly I think unbeknownst to her, just tried to stonewall. And once it was just this idea that I was barely hanging on, emotionally, my mental health was in disrepair. And I hadn't admitted to myself that my mental health was in disrepair, because I grew up where mental health was very much seen as other people have mental health problems. It's fine that they have them.
Right.
We don't have them. That is weakness. Suck it up. And so I just hadn't even admitted that to myself, but I was barely hanging on. And now somebody's going to live here next year, maybe. and I'm going to have to take care of them. And I wasn't making any money. Like couldn't figure out how to turn this law firm into like money that I could bring home with me. And that was really stressful. So once I kind of got my shit together, I sat down and I made a list of things that had to get figured out. And at the top of the list was money. And so I read a book about money, and the author was like, you should listen to our podcast. I'd never listened to a podcast at this point. This is probably August of 15. And within a month of picking up that phone and listening to my first podcast episode, I own the mic I'm talking into right now.
That's so crazy.
$1,000 worth of gear. I'm set up in my spare bedroom and I'm intoxicated by it. Like, it's exciting. And I started recording with a friend. Like, a shout out to Josh Goodman, one of my law school buddies.
That's awesome.
He would come to my office after work, and we'd record and we'd just test the gear and mess with things. And we started talking about these big visions. And I was already at that point, I had my own small firm, couple of employees, and I was doing a lot of the marketing myself. I was learning SEO and PPC, content marketing. And I was like, I think like we should start a podcast at the law firm. And I ended up doing that. Starting a podcast at the firm. I think I made it 10 episodes before I just couldn't talk about the law anymore. I found myself wandering into other areas that I really cared about. And I ended up breaking it off into like kind of my own personal project. But to circle back a little, during that process, it never really occurred to me that I could do that for somebody else. It was because I very much had this like other people do that mentality. Who am I? I've never taken a marketing class. I've never taken a communications class, no media, anything. I took a business law class in undergrad, and that was the extent of my business classes. So the idea that I would do that. And then Josh, one of the nights we were just recording and playing, like he could see it. He could see it on. You can tell when you see somebody who discovers something, it's just all over them. Because people ask me, they'll say, you hear people say, how do you know if you're in love? Well, if you have to ask me, you're not, right? Because it's like, ooh. And that's how it felt. I just loved it, but I still didn't think I could do that. Like, that's some other people do. But Josh, we were sitting on the microphone, we were just talking. He was like, I predict that within a year, you're going to be helping other lawyers do this. And he was wrong. It was about 2 years before I got my first client. And I think that was mostly me just needing to believe that was something I could do. It was very much a mindset issue. But that's kind of the short story as to how I love that I can tell like a 10-minute short story. And
no, that's great.
But of how I kind of found it, I loved it. When I opened that app, I realized everything is there. Everything. No matter what you're interested in, you just start typing it, and there's probably 10 podcasts. And this was back in 2015. Like, everything is literally there now.
Yeah. Oh, it is.
And I found people on there who changed the way I look at the world. Like Tom Bilyeu he doesn't know it, but he's one of my primary mentors in life. For about 5 years, I listened to everything he said, and he had a book list, and I'd read the book. One of the first books I read that he recommended was this book called Mindset, that just changed the trajectory of my life, because it changed the way that I view the world and myself in it. And I found that because I listened to his podcast, and I found that so compelling and so interesting that you can just sit down like we're doing right now. Somebody right now is hearing us have this conversation a year after we had it. They're just discovering it, and they're going to hear something in here, I hope, that provides value to them that they hadn't thought about before. Maybe somebody's going to grab that book, they're going to read it, and they're going to go, damn, that was really good. All because you and I decided to have this conversation today and make this available for people. And that was so interesting to me. I was like, I have to be a part of this. But I definitely didn't have any idea that it would turn into what it's turned into.
No, your story is just so cool, because I do think that for most people that go to law school, the idea that you would ever do something else is completely foreign. And so I think that there is a lot of brave lawyers that recognize like what they're doing currently is not something that they're in love with. And so it takes a huge step even to like change practice areas where it's kind of like, I'm going to go into this new space that I don't know and try to figure out, start from scratch. I'm going to, and I've seen a couple of lawyers recently that have made that move. And, to me, it's like, great, because if what you're doing currently is not, giving you juice, you got to go look somewhere else for that and make sure that, your work where you're spending a significant, if not the vast majority of your time, is driving the rest of your life, not just financially, but energy wise, like driving everything else. But even beyond like switching practice areas, a move outside the law is one of those things that it as crazy as it sounds, it's almost like, I don't know if I can do that. Like, is that allowed? Am I allowed to go, do something different than the law? I just think it's like such a mind-breaking thing. You spend all this money, you're in debt from law school. Like your spouse's family is like, is he sick or something?
Right. What's wrong with him? No, so you're totally right. And then you've already established yourself over a period of at least a few years. Your referral network is people who know that you do this. And then there is that pressure from your friends and family that think you're crazy. And I got really fortunate. My wife and my mom are the two people in my life that I really care about what they think. And they're my main support structure. And they were both really supportive. They had their reservations. Most of them, they didn't share with me on the spot. They were, which I got to give them credit for giving me that space.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And but there was a lot of pressure. Maybe pressure is the wrong word, but there was a lot of people going, sure. Yeah, it's very exciting to chase these new things, but you have to be realistic. But I think that's a very lawyer response, is to see all of the ways this could go wrong.
Right.
And we're issue spotters, right? These are all of the issues. And so there were a lot of people in my network that were like, you're fucking crazy. But since I have left the law, I've discovered a lot of people who have left, and they'll reach out and be like, hey, I heard you left to like talk about this. And then even more, I hear from people who have thought about leaving and are like, tell me more about this. How does this work? And that's been really cool. I've started teaching CLEs on, I think the title of my last CLE was, it's not me, it's you, when putting mental health over profession, because all of our CLEs, I felt like at least, were tailored to figuring out how to put your square peg in the law's round hole.
That's right. Yeah.
Instead of stepping back and saying, maybe it's not me. Maybe I am not broken.
Yeah.
Maybe the law is not a good fit for who I am. There's no amount of meditation that I can do and breathing exercises and compartmentalizing and project management software that is ever going to solve the inherent problem that I have with this profession. And I faced pushback when I pitched this CLE. They really wanted me to include information about how people could try to stay in the law. And I said, sure, I'll do it. I didn't do it. That's not my story.
Yeah.
And I think it's disingenuous.
I think it is. Yeah.
Because they're asking me to, hey, no, some people aren't here for that. They're not. Some people need to hear it. And I got quite a few messages after from people who had already left, who just needed their credits because they wanted to keep their license. And from people who were thinking about leaving that were like, I feel like you gave me permission to start exploring this. And I was like, that's all I wanted to do.
Hey, podcast listeners, I want to briefly interrupt today's episode to invite you to join me at the inaugural Freedom Fighter Summit in Asheville this October. This in-person only event is designed for growth-minded lawyers determined to take their criminal defense practice to the next level. Due to the size of the summit's venue, there are a limited number of seats available. Don't miss out on the incredible lineup of speakers and spectacular networking opportunity that this summit provides. For more details, visit www.freedomfighter.com. www.miniclaw.com/summit. Enter the promo code NCDWI guy, all lowercase, all one word at checkout for $150 off your summit ticket. Look forward to seeing you there. Now back to the show. Yeah, I mean, I think that the way it's presented a lot of times when you talk about, substance use issues in the bar or, professionalism, CLE requirements, whatever it might be, it's always kind of like, yes, the law is inherently stressful. And so basically avoid, kind of buffering with these things and figure out how to like buffer with, these more positive things, basically, again, it's not really breaking the stress of the life cycle. It's like, how can you live a better life outside the law as opposed to kind of destroying your life outside the law through substances or whatever other kind of like poor forms of buffering there might be, eating or whatever else it might be. And, that's such a bizarro world because first of all, like, I think it's actually not a good way of looking at the law. I know you've met people like this, and I mean, everybody can kind of see this. There are people that just love practicing law and they could do it 150 hours a week. And it is like literally the thing that brings them the most energy in their life. I mean, it's a place of, positive engagement. And again, whether they're working 30 hours a week or 80, whatever it might be, this is where they're, getting their, juice from is from the law. So to kind of like phrase it as, the law is just like this inherently stressful thing. Yes. I mean, there's going to be stresses with any job, but there's plenty of people that are finding a ton of joy and, intrigue and passion in practicing law. So no need to buffer, right? Like there's just no need to have anything that kind of fills that void. So I feel like it's not a good way of looking at our profession as like it's, this inherently stressful thing that we're all trapped inside of.
And maybe I don't know that I know enough, but I have a certain perspective. And I think it does get borne out a little bit when we look at numbers. There's a reason that we have to take mental health hours. There's a reason they don't ignore the issue because lawyers suffer more. Now, is that because a certain kind of person is drawn there? I definitely don't know. And this is very anecdotal, but to speak to, there's this one person who was a mentor in my life that I always held him out as the person who they were born for it. Right. And I mean, excellent litigator, just one of the best I've ever seen. Always happy, always got it together, never feels like things are too much. And just recently, I talked to him and he's like, I'm struggling. And I was like, you? I was like, I'm sorry. I don't want, like, I was like, it does. I feel weird saying this to you, but it makes me feel a little better in some way. And is on anxiety medication now. And that to me was like, aha, I knew it was the law.
That's right.
But I've done a lot of work with NC LAP, and I'm working with the bars, bar cares in North Carolina. And one of the things that I've heard Robin Morades from NC LAP say a lot is the law puts people into a very kind of unnatural situation. And she compares it to a zebra on the savannah where they're in fight or flight for a handful of minutes and it's over. One way or the other, they're not in that heightened state anymore. And for a lot of lawyers, they end up in that heightened state, but they never get eaten and they never get away.
Oh yeah,
they just kind of live there. And then she talks about the numbers of lawyers who admit to having anxiety and depression issues. And there's I don't remember who she's quoting, but somebody says, this number admit that they're having it and the rest are probably lying. Which again, to your point, I think there have to be people that are very well adjusted, that have found a practice area that just kind of fits, but it is really heavy for a lot of people.
It is
like heavier, yeah. I think, than, I don't know. I worked in corporate compliance at the bank after I left law while I was building this company. Yeah, it paid me a lot more money than law did, and it was really easy. Now, I mean, your mileage may vary from job to job,
Yeah.
but I just was like, oh damn, like it was, but at 5 o'clock work was over, and that was new, and it was so I'll take, you argue the one side, I'll argue the other, like good lawyers, right?
But I do think, I mean, to that point, I mean, I think that is one of the things that is very difficult to me about criminal defense specifically, is that it's really hard to clock out of. And I would say that that's probably true of, a number of different practice areas. But I think that, with criminal defense, it's just, people's lives are in your hands, and everybody's had a situation where their client is getting, arrested late at night. There's been, some development that's happened late in the day, and it's kind of like, all right, well, I gotta chug along with this thing until it's fixed. And so, I mean, it's a hard, practice area within the law to really clock out of. And the more kind of significant the charges in terms of felony level, again, the more that weight, I think, just kind of becomes somewhat ever present. And again, there are some people, like you're saying, like, some very well-adjusted people that I think kind of learn to live in that state, where it's just kind of like, I'm putting everything in perspective. I know that I am going to bat for my client, and yet I've still got, I've got a spouse, I've got kids, I've got, other things in life that I want to kind of give my time to, places in the community. So, I mean, I think that there are people that are really able to put that in perspective, but it is inherently stressful. I mean, there's nothing, again, even on the traffic ticket end of things, people that call on that, they're, it's as serious as it gets when they get that speeding ticket, so you can hear the panic and anxiety and sometimes anger as you're talking about that 15 over. So it's people are.
Well, and one of the ways I looked at it when I was, doing speeding tickets or unemployment hearings or criminal defense, or really almost anything where you're representing somebody, is business development for you is going around and just recruiting problems from other people, recruiting problems, recruiting conflict. I don't like conflict. That was something that I kind of always knew, but I thought I could push through. And so I'm out there actively recruiting conflict of other people and their problems to bring into my own life, which was just like pouring acid on top of me, essentially. And I didn't understand that I was like poisoning myself.
Yeah, no, I think that's, again, like a great analogy in terms of how that works. And obviously, you're problem solving now, but it's a very different type of problem solving, right? Like, I mean, it's, very, very different. And so again, finding the juice that can kind of propel you forward is so critical. Like, I mean, and so everybody's got that unique place where, again, I think gifts and talents and personality wise, it's like, this is what I was kind of born to do, so to speak. And, whether that's through experiences or some sort of genetic disposition, I mean, clearly, when you find that spot where you're like, this is it, you definitely know.
Yeah.
Well, in terms of kind of like, I guess maybe switching gears a little bit into kind of LawPods and podcasting, in terms of the value that you kind of see that comes through a podcast, you did get involved, like, with podcasting on the very front end of things. Like, again, the idea that you could monetize a podcast at the time that you were, doing this in the early stages was also a little bit crazy, because it was such a new form of media, and yet obviously, I mean, has just completely, taken off. So what do you say is like the kind of real, value? And obviously it's like a big question, but like in terms of podcasting with clients that you've worked with, what is really the value that this brings to a law firm?
There's value on a few fronts, and a lot of it is stopping and asking yourself, what do you want? Why are you doing this? And that is where you start to think, okay, what do I want out of it? And that's usually when people show up, they will tell me, I want a podcast. And that's about as baked as the idea is. They're like, I want to buy a microphone. I want to talk to it. People should hear what I have to say, which I get that. That speaks to me. I think that's why I started. But there's a few different reasons why you do it. For you, you're doing it, and feel free to kind of course correct me. I think you're doing it to establish yourself as an authority. I'm Jake. I'm James. I know what's what. I know about the things. Talk to me. I'm the DWI person, and people get to know you. They get to like you. They get to trust you. You are developing your network by getting on the microphone and talking to people like me and getting to know them. They get to know you, like you, trust you. And those people are going to go to your conferences. They're going to refer you work. They might even, some of the really good ones out there might decide, I want to go work for him. So you are really establishing yourself as the person in the industry that does it. But for another lawyer, they would look at it and they would say, I need to get more clients right now. And my pipeline isn't converting. People are coming to me, but they're not converting at the rate that I think that they should be. And that's where a podcast can be really valuable. Is somebody lands on your website, whether it's SEO, PPC, referral, they have questions. We know what their questions are because we have heard them 1,000 ways in every consult. And so we make content. That's why we write blogs. Blogs help with SEO. They also help nurture a lead. Here's my problem. I want to know what the answer to this problem is. Make me feel better. And that's where the podcast shines, is we're going to make an episode about every one of those questions, speak directly to it. Not a long winding episode that has 15 different answers in it that no one's ever going to find. You could put a body in there, no one would find it. And what we're going to do is we're going to make each episode speak to that question, and then you're going to put them in a place where the client can find them on the website. So when they start looking for their questions, boom, there it is. They listen to you 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. They get an answer to their question, but they also feel better. They feel better that you let them know that you've been there before. You know exactly what this looks like. You have walked this path 1,000 times. You know every little angle that could come up. You know what they need to do next. And they're really, ultimately, a lot of people, when they come to an attorney, they want to feel better about what's about to happen, because this is complicated and confusing and scary for a lot of people. And a lawyer that can make them feel better is usually going to get that case. And that podcast can go way down the field in helping you do that, because all of this is happening before you even talk to them. You're establishing your credibility with them. They get to hear your voice, which is really impactful. That's one of my favorite parts of podcasting, is developing that relationship with someone by whispering in their ear. And they get to know your personality a little bit, perhaps your sense of humor. And all of that, all right, you've nurtured that lead. They pick up the phone, because that's what we want. We really just want to create a funnel that gets people to pick up the phone and set the appointment. And then they set that appointment. Now they're yours to lose. They might have other lawyers that they're going to talk to after you, but not if you do it right. And, if they walk out of your office, or they hang up without deciding they want to go with you, now your chances are going down. So we want to do everything we can to ensure that that person becomes a client right away. And you sit down with them, you open your mouth, they already know you. They already know exactly what you sound like. And you build on top of that relationship that you've already started building. And now you're going to ask them for $10,000. And you have built that know, like, trust with that person, where that friction of getting a yes out of that person is now significantly reduced. So that's one of the ways that I say probably 70%, if I had to guess, without looking at my client list, of the way that they're using their podcast. And then the other way is, like you, they're using it to educate referral sources, to drive other sources of revenue, education, conferences, things like that, referrals.
Yeah, there's been so much benefit to it from my personal end. I kind of what led to it originally was my brothers and I and brother-in-law were going to do a business podcast. I've got two brothers, and one of them is in marketing. The other one was in sales. I was kind of doing legal business, and then my brother-in-law had a construction business, carpentry business. So we're going to do this business podcast, and his name's Mike. So it was going to be three brothers and a Mike. And we tried to tried to get this launched, and we all had young kids. So literally, like, the only time that we could get together on a call was at like 4 o'clock in the morning. So I can remember like waking up. We did this like 2 or 3 weeks. Somebody was always late because the alarm clock like had not gone off. And effectively, like my brother in marketing, he like got us all of the, the Blue Yeti mic that I use. Like, he had gotten all of the equipment and stuff. And very quickly it was like, guys, this is not going to work. So basically, like, it just like fizzled out. And then, COVID hit, and it was like, all right, well, I guess I've got time to try to strike something up. So I think about a week after court shut down in March 2020, I was like, well, I'm gonna try something on this end in the legal front. And originally it was kind of like, this will be a good way to kind of spread some information to the North Carolina defense community. If nobody in the defense community listens to it, other lawyers within our firm will be able to like kind of use this as a way of getting educated on these issues. So every time that I'm recording this, it's like at least 7, 8, 9 other lawyers here are going to have the opportunity to kind of learn about these specific issues of law. And then, grew into this, opportunity to become, to speak at places where, probably I would not have had the opportunity or quite the same. Just chance of getting that type of speaking engagement. Personally, for me, it's been amazing because, I kind of do two types of episodes. One is like the guest podcast that we're doing right now. The other one is like an individual, me talking about some legal business issue or DWI specific issue. And every time I do one of those individual podcasts, there's a ton of education that happens through that because I'm going out and researching these things and then, trying to kind of put it into like a meaningful framework. So thinking through it, it's really like a powerful educational tool. And then these kind of podcasts, where I have a guest, have been even more helpful because I've literally just get to sit here and learn for, an hour and a half. And, from some of the best people in business, some of the best people that are, have been practicing DWI cases for 30 years that probably otherwise would never sit down and have an hour conversation with me. Not because they wouldn't, there's not I'm not in their city. They're not here. It's like, I wouldn't call them up on the phone and just talk shop typically for an hour. So it's just given such an incredible like opportunity of personal learning. So across the board, there's been nothing but upside to it. People ask me, what, how do you find the time, or do you, kind of what are you getting, what are you getting out of this? What's the
people, they have trouble seeing the vision of like, how does that turn into money?
Yeah, depth. And I think it does, although I don't have any way of like tracking that. I'm sure that there's some sort of like maybe monetary benefit, but really more importantly, at the end of the day, it's like, well, I love doing it. I'm learning a ton. The team is learning a ton. Like, it's like, there's so much benefit coming out of it. So I think it's also, I think that's why it's so important, to your point, like what is the reason you want to do a podcast? Because if you're trying to do it for a monetary gain and then you're not seeing the kind of financial, kind of reward, so to speak, then it's going to be tough. And I think it's hard to like build it, for a financial purpose from the outset.
Well, it's content marketing.
It's content marketing,
and
right? Yeah.
And that you have to be thinking, is that the right decision for me right now? Because at the end of the day, it is a relatively inexpensive. And I know that depending on where you are with your own firms, whoever's listening, that can sound absurd that it's not that much money. But when your firm starts to grow and you start to look at what you're spending on SEO and what you might be spending on pay-per-click, or, if you're into TV, this is a really low barrier to entry from a time perspective and from a financial perspective. But content marketing also is a long game. It's not the kind of thing where it's going to turn into money next month. It could, but the odds of it really paying off they become exponential down the road, where you do it, you stay with it, you're creating this bank of content that starts to live on. But you said it earlier with the relationships. You are getting on the phone with somebody for an hour. They are not going to, they might take your call and they might say, James, what do you need? I'm kind of busy right now. What do you need? And you might get a question or two. And if you're really interesting and you scratch an itch they have, you might get longer. But what's in it for them to just sit there and talk to you on the phone? And you're going to find that really, really difficult. Whereas with a podcast, I'm sure that you have recorded with people that you didn't even think would say yes to be on your podcast.
Oh, definitely.
But you gave them something of value. You offered them a platform. You offered them an opportunity to talk about themselves. A lot of people like that. And then there's
also a lot of, like, I'd say in the criminal defense realm, there's a ton of lawyers that really just love teaching. I mean, I don't know if that's unique to our arena or if that's, true in other practice areas. I don't know what that typically looks like, but everybody that I get on with, even people that I'm pretty sure are like that, I don't think they're gonna be say, I mean, everybody is always excited about this opportunity to kind of share with the other lawyers. And that's one of the reasons why doing it for lawyers, as opposed to doing it kind of geared towards potential clients, has been so much fun. Because again, at the end of the day, it's just like, this is just a great place to all learn together and have fun.
Right. Yeah. It's, I think that it's not going to be right for every firm, especially depending on your stage of growth. Sure. But when your firm's in a position to invest the resources, invest the time, and play that long game, I mean, I think you've been at it 3 years right now. And that tells me that it is valuable for you, that you are seeing those results, because you are not going to keep putting your time and energy here if you're not seeing them.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely 100%. I mean, I think it's and there's no plan on taking it down anytime soon. I mean, there's just so much great value that I'm getting from it, from an educational perspective, that even if there was no other reason for doing it, then and nobody, there would still be value in doing it, even if nobody was listening, because it really is like such a great educational tool for me personally. So, I mean, it's just, I think it's such a huge thing. You've kind of helped get these things off the ground. And you said, kind of low barrier of entry in terms of cost. And I totally agree with that. If somebody wants to start a podcast, what should be like their first steps, whether that's planning, whether that is, equipment, what should be like their first steps for getting that launched?
I mean, it's always why. The planning. It's, Simon Sinek, start with why. Why am I doing the thing? I understand that you want to have a podcast. You listen to a lot of podcasts. Podcasts are cool because they totally are, right? But why are you doing it? I think that's a really, really good place to start. Why am I doing it? Am I doing it to educate prospects? Am I doing it to educate referral sources? Am I doing it to develop relationships with people that could ultimately end up driving revenue from one perspective or another? And understanding why you're doing it, and then crafting the show in that way, because people will get caught up in starting a show that tries to do too many things. Now, sometimes you can really start a show that has overlap, that can accomplish multiple goals at once, but that's strategic. And you want to understand why you're doing it. And that way, every decision that you make with the podcast, you already know how, what factors to use to analyze the decision, because you know where you're trying to go, what the end game is. And so thinking about why you're doing it can be a big help. And you can always pivot as things progress. but that will help you make decisions in the early times. And then once you get that microphone on your desk, you're not then like on the spot trying to figure out what the hell you're doing. But yeah, once you have that idea of why you're doing it and what you feel like you want to do with it, then just buy a microphone. I mean, really, to me, buy the microphone. Samson Q2U, very low barrier to entry there. I think it's about 60 or $70. The Samson Q9U is just a slight step up, but it's only like $100. And these are USB mics. They plug right into your computer. So you can sit right at your desk, and which is what probably 95% of my clients all over the world. And I work for some of the biggest firms in the world, like all over the globe. That's what they're doing. They're plugging their mic right into their computer, sitting right there, having a conversation with people all over the world. And then when they're done, they hang up. And that's the way to get started with a USB mic. Don't try to get too fancy, especially if you don't already know. Don't spend all your time and energy researching how to do a mixer like I did. But podcasting was different. It was a lot harder back then. And get that mic, plug it in, and start talking, start recording. See if this is a process that you kind of like. Maybe hop on a Zoom call with somebody else and record an episode and see how it goes, see how you like it. And if you really do enjoy it, I think then you start taking steps from there. We certainly don't have the time for me to tell you all of the little steps that it takes. Just as well as I do, James, that there's more involved than just actually recording your voice. But one bit of advice that I would give, and I'd be happy to hear your perspective on it too, James, is I wouldn't, as a lawyer, try to do all of that stuff myself, or honestly, probably even learn about it, because the learning curve is relatively steep if you don't know much about it. And it's going to be a lot cheaper to hire somebody, even if you're just hiring a freelancer, to help you get this done. Because I always tell people, and I think about it myself in my own business, what is my hourly rate? Whatever your hourly rate is, set that. And anything that doesn't pay your hourly rate inside your business, you shouldn't be doing. And podcasting is not going to pay your hourly rate. You're going to, let's say your hourly rate is $250, $300. I am not, there's almost nobody who's going to edit your podcast or write show notes for you or help you get on podcast platforms that's going to charge a fraction of that. And so now if you really enjoy it, like I did, go figure it out, start your own agency. Let's compete. I love competition. I might even hire you and buy your company. I don't know, but that'd be my recommendation if you're interested in it. And I do think this isn't a bright, shiny object. I believe in this medium. I believed in it before other people believed in it. I don't think that that's because I'm special. I think I just put my face in it and I loved it and I breathed it and I paid attention really closely and I saw the trend every year. That is the staircase. Every single year, consumption is going up, but not just consumption and what they're consuming. It was a lot of entertainment, a lot of sports, a lot of video games in the beginning. But then it started to be a lot of personal development and then education, learning things. And that's exactly where a lot of law podcasts fall, is somebody can come to your website and they can learn the things they need to learn with very low friction. You're not asking them to stop and read. Hold on a second. Watch this. Watch my video where I talk in monotone with my wall of books, right?
Yeah.
And instead, that never actually get pulled off the shelf. You probably bought them from the law school, right? So because lawyers look professional with their books, right? And you're just saying, press play and let's go. We're gonna go to the gym with you, walk your dog, clean your house, drive to work, any of those things, and get that information from them. And that's why podcasts blew up. I don't think they're going anywhere. And it's just such a good way to get yourself in front of prospects, get yourself in front of referral sources, and network with other people. I love it. And it was a wild ride in the beginning, because for the first solid 2 years of the business, lawyers were like, we don't need your thing. That's not how we get clients. They didn't need websites either, right?
Yeah.
And it was, but really, you said you started it in COVID. Everybody did. COVID was amazing. Business was already starting to grow. I quit my full-time job on March 2nd, 2020, which 2 weeks later I made a huge mistake. But I hadn't. The COVID years were good. And things really started happening. Lawyers are using these in really fun, interesting ways that are driving a lot of business, and that has turned into a fun thing for us that has been driving our business.
Yeah, I mean, I think to, in terms of the starting points, I totally agree with having a good why. I mean, if you have a good why, I think everything else will follow from that. And, it'll also be kind of a place of contact of making sure you're kind of going into it for the right reasons, so to speak. I mean, I think that that's such a good starting point. I had a business coach couple of years back that would frequently tell me done is better than perfect. And that's like the other piece of advice that I would say with podcasting has been like a really good compass, point for me is just the done is better than perfect motto. With guests that I have on the podcast, everybody's always like, how does the lighting look in my office? And, I've had, probably close to, 75, 80 guests on the podcast at this point, most people doing it from their office space, some with papers in the background, some with, pristine looking, background, some, from a cell, like literally from their, iPhone and just kind of shooting up with, the headphones on. And honestly, none of it matters, because basically at the end of the day, the only thing that people are looking for is the content. They're not hoping for some sort of a glorified background. It's not to say that can't help. And I do think that there is like a place for having good lighting and all that, but like make it easy on yourself. I would say is just keep it simple.
Right. And don't so often, I say this, because I am an authority on this subject, is we make it really hard on ourselves to get started. And I think that's just a defense mechanism. Yeah. We are looking for reasons not to press record. I've got to get the right mic. I got to buy all the things. And I've seen it a lot of times. That's a really big closet back there. And it has far fewer things in it than it used to, because I had to buy all the things. I had to buy all the right mics and this, and I had to have if I just had this one video camera, then I'd be able to start shooting those videos. Right. And that's bullshit. Yeah. At the end of the day, it's, start with your iPhone if you need to, and start it, get it going, because that's momentum. And when you've got the momentum, now you can build on it. But don't think that just planning for 5 years is going to make it better if you have never hit record. I think I listened to Phil Jackson's book, and he's talking about, you got to take the shots. You've got to actually go out and play basketball. You can't watch other people play basketball. You can't think about playing basketball. You got to do the thing.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think that if you can simplify it and just make doing the thing that the point that you're concentrating on, if you pair that then with somebody like you that knows what they're doing in terms of editing and knows how this can be basically communicated through social media, through, splitting up videos, through, long form, what platforms to download everything to. I think that trying to figure all that out, like the reason people get into podcasting, again, you correct, you know better than I do. So if this is not right, but most lawyers, I would say, that get into podcasting do it because they want to share information, depending on who it is, who their audience is, maybe to this audience over that audience, but want to share information. Most of us are not interested in figuring out how to create a 30-second clip for Facebook, or to, post it in this particular arena, or how to push that out, or how to create how to even get this thing to show up in a Apple, Apple podcast, just all of these little things. So, I guess, I think that allows then this to become a much easier kind of endeavor if you find somebody. So if you wouldn't mind, Robert, to just kind of talk a little bit about what your company does in terms of support. And obviously it's different probably firm to firm, but just some of the support that you guys provide in terms of helping get a podcast launched for anybody that's interested in doing that.
Sure. Our goal is, and our tagline is, you do the talking, we do the rest. And we do try to hold to that. Having been a lawyer, I understand that time is the most valuable asset. And we have worked and we continue to work on simplifying the process. It has to be easy. If it's not easy, they're not going to do it.
Yeah,
and if they don't do it, they're not going to get the value. If they don't get the value, they're not going to continue to work with us. And so we're thinking about the unique challenges faced as far as schedule. Schedule's hard. You're everywhere. Sometimes you're traveling. How can we make it so easy that it would be silly not to do it? Right. And I think that's a question every business owner should ask. And so on that front, we set up a scheduling calendar for our clients. They schedule themselves. They have their unique link. They schedule a time to record. They hop on that call. We have clients that are frequently in hotel rooms all over the world.
That's awesome.
And they just bring their little kit with them and they hop on. We check their sound levels and we use a platform dedicated to podcast recording where we get high quality audio and video. And, if they have a guest, they can enter their guest email. Everybody gets an automated invite. We check their sound levels. I know you know how difficult that can be. Like, wait, how do I select my mic? And we do all of that. We hit record. They have the conversation. They hang up. They're done. They never have to think about it again. And a lot of our clients don't. Our really big firms, like they're listening to everything. But we have a lot of trial lawyers, like PI clients. And when they first start with us, we'll send them the audio to review. And they're like, no, I know what I said. I was there. And which we love those clients. But it's just they hang up, they're done. We're going to go in and edit the podcast, take out ums, uhs, awkward pauses, tighten it up, our philosophy on editing is make you sound like you're having your best public speaking day while leaving no trace that we were there. And edit, bring in those intros and outros. There was a, I'm going to edit that bad boy out. That's my filler word. But we're going to mix in the intros and outros with professional voiceover artists. The only ones we work with are professionals that are doing Toyota commercials, PlayStation commercials with a soundtrack, make it sound really professional. And then from there, put some show notes together, link any resources you've talked about in the episode and share that to podcast platforms. We're also going to take the full video, edit that on a template, post that to your YouTube account, and then take that video and cut it up. Make clips from the video, little 60-second clips with captions and branding in vertical, square, landscape to share on the different platforms. And that was something that we didn't really get into during the podcast. One of the most valuable parts of having a podcast is all of that content that comes from a 20, 30-minute conversation. The full video, the show notes, the podcast itself, the written content, the transcript, and then those video clips that you can share, because it's hard to convert someone to become a podcast listener. Like your type of podcast it's hard to convert a listener because someone's going to tell them about it and someone else is going to tell them about it, but they've heard about 15 other podcasts they're subscribed to that they still haven't listened to yet. And it's hard to get them over that hump. And that's where those clips are, that micro content, because they see it. They're scrolling and they see it and it's got captions on it. They don't have to tap the screen, very little friction. They just have to stop. And there you are, you're talking. I've seen your videos. And the captions are there. There's a title there. They get an understanding. Oh, that's kind of for me. That's a question I have. I'd like to know more about that. They keep watching. And then at the end, they go, I want to hear more about this. Boom. You've converted a listener in a way that just dropping your link, if they even saw it, is never going to do, or at least at a much significantly reduced rate. And then we also offer sharing those right to your social media accounts. Like we hook up to your accounts and we create the clips, share them to your accounts. And so it's really just show up, have a conversation, and get all the things done.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, keeping it simple for anybody, but I would say, specifically for lawyers. Like I think that's just such a powerful model. And I mean, again, in terms of trying to figure out how to get this great content into the hands of people that can benefit from it, that's like a whole nother piece of the puzzle. And one that, again, me personally, that's not something that I'm suited to. I think most people that are, most lawyers, that's not kind of like the place that we're focusing on. And, I think podcasting is one of the spaces, like as we go into this world of artificial intelligence and chat GPT and how that might change like content marketing from like a verbiage side of things, you really can't like replicate as of now, as of this moment in time, you can't replicate somebody's voice or two lawyers having a conversation. It's not something that, is easily able to be kind of like taken over, so to speak, by AI. Like your persona is a part of that. So in terms of being like a differentiator, I really do think that that's one of the places where a firm could stand out going into the future, because web design is going to become much more competitive and to some extent meaningless. I mean, because it's going to be so simple, but that face and voice, that's a real person. People are going to recognize that's a real person that they're listening to.
And even if you could replicate it, why would you want to?
That's right. Yeah.
It's important to personalize yourself to somebody, because that's a big selling point. We do business with people that we like, that we get a good feeling for. Like, that is my kind of person. And one thing I think that is a little underrated about putting yourself out there like that is you can also disqualify people who aren't a good fit. They're like, I don't like the cut of that guy's jib. Perfect.
Yeah.
I'd rather find out before we get down the road.
Totally. Yeah.
I think that scares some lawyers. They're like, no, I need everybody.
No, I think that's totally good.
Don't.
Yeah, man, you definitely want to get clients that are not going to be a good fit with the firm, kind of, figure that out early on, because otherwise it's going to be a lot of problems down the road. Well, Robert, I can't thank you enough for all of the information. I would highly encourage anybody that's interested in starting a podcast, whether the end user is a potential client, something outside of the legal industry altogether that you think is cool and fun to talk about, whether you're trying to use it as a way of educating the bar, talking about a specific type of crime or legal issue. Obviously we live in a world currently where the true crime podcasts are like through the charts at this point. So, talking about some sort of true crime element, whatever it might be. If you're interested in doing that, I would encourage people to get out there and start doing it, because it's been a blast on my end. And then contact Robert and have him help you get this thing launched.
Right on. And I feel like I can't come on a North Carolina DWI podcast without name dropping my very first client who got me started on this, Bill Powers. He came up to me. He came up to me at a networking event, and he said, "I see you're doing that podcast thing. I want to do that. Can you help me?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to help you. And can you come by in the morning?" in very Bill Powers fashion. But yeah, he was client number one. He gave me the opportunity to learn a lot of things, and I'll be forever indebted for him for that opportunity.
No, Bill's amazing. He's going to be speaking at the upcoming Freedom Fighters Summit, and hoping to have him on the podcast. We're trying to get details worked out in terms of getting him scheduled. But yeah, just such an awesome person. And again, one of those lawyers that really is totally committed to teaching, helping other lawyers know the law better, which is, again, I'm really grateful for that in the criminal defense community for lawyers that are interested in helping other lawyers get better at their craft. So yeah, huge shout out to Bill. He's always been one of the legal leaders on that front. Well, we'll love it, Robert. Hope we get a lot of people that launch podcasts from this episode, and or decide that maybe some dream job that they've got, they're ready to kick it off. So
get out of the law. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. If you found the information in this podcast to be valuable, I simply ask that you pay it forward and share this podcast with another member of the legal community. Also, if you would leave us a rating or a review on whatever platform you are listening on, I would greatly appreciate it.